Welcome to the Big Game Hunting Podcast, where we help hunters like you prepare for the big game hunting adventures you've always dreamed of. Now, here's your host, John McAdams.
Hello, this is your host, John McAdams, and you're listening to episode 110 of the Big Game Hunting Podcast. As I was doing some episode planning recently, I realized that it had been a while since I'd done one on caliber comparisons. I regularly hear from you guys that you like those episodes, so I figured I'd put one on the schedule for today. Now, I think that most hunters would agree that the .300 Winchester Magnum, the .338 Winchester Magnum, and the .338 Lapua Magnum rounds are serious heavy hitters that can get the job done on big game. They're all relatively flat shooting and accurate cartridges that carry a lot of energy out to longer ranges. However, the designers of each cartridge were trying to accomplish very different goals and built each one prioritizing specific attributes. For this reasons, there are some massive differences between these three cartridges, and they have very different strengths and weaknesses. Not surprisingly, though there is a little bit of overlap in their best uses, the .300 Win Mag, the .338 Win Mag, and the .338 Lapua are all best suited for distinct tasks. So today I'm going to do a detailed comparison of the .300 Win Mag versus the .338 Lapua versus the .338 Win Mag in order to parse out the differences between these three cartridges so you can make an informed decision regarding which one will work best for you. So before we get started, let's thank the sponsor of today's show, huntingguns101.com. If you love these sorts of discussions like we're having today on cartridge comparisons, then you need to go to huntingguns101.com. There you can receive some specific rifle, cartridge, ammo, and scope recommendations tailored to your specific hunting needs, as well as access to our exclusive Facebook community and exclusive discounts on certain outfitted hunts through big game hunting adventures in Africa or Canada. Okay, so now let's talk about the history of the .300 Win Mag, the .338 Win Mag, and the .338 Lapua Magnum. So the years following World War II were a true renaissance of civilian firearm and cartridge development in the USA. That time period saw a flood of new centerfire rifle cartridges like the .222 Remington, the .280 Remington, and the .308 Winchester, as well as its descendants, the .243 Winchester and the 7mm .08 Remington. Around that same time, the Magnum era also began in earnest when Winchester rolled out a line of new belted Magnum cartridges utilizing a modified 375 H&H case. The .458 Winchester Magnum came first in 1956, and it was followed by the .338 Winchester Magnum and the .264 Winchester Magnum during the next couple of years. Those cartridges utilized a 375 H&H Magnum case necked down, or up in the case of the .458 Win Mag, and shortened from 2.85 inches down to 2.5 inches long. The designers opted for these shortened cases so that all three cartridges would fit in a standard length rifle action, which is the same as the old 30-06, instead of the longer Magnum length rifle action required by the original 375 H&H cartridge. Winchester offered these cartridges in their legendary Model 70 rifle, and they marketed each one to a particular segment of the American hunting community. The .264 Win Mag to Western hunters wanting a flatter shooting cartridge for thin skid game like mule deer or pronghorn, the .338 Win Mag to hunters pursuing really large and or tough North American game like moose and grizzly bear, and the .458 Win Mag to hunters going afield after really big and dangerous game like Cape buffalo in Africa. The .338 Win Mag was not an immediate commercial success for the company, but it has gradually developed a reputation as an excellent all-around cartridge for big game hunting during the ensuing decades. It's not an extremely widely used or popular cartridge, but it's very well liked in that portion of the hunting community desiring a powerful and reliable medium bore rifle like brown or grizzly bear guides up in Alaska. It's able to push a 225 grain bullet at 2,800 feet per second, and so it's quite powerful, and it's capable of ethically taking almost any species of game in the world. Now, Winchester didn't stop with the .264, .338, and .458 Win Mag cartridges, though. Remington sent shockwaves through the hunting and shooting worlds when they introduced the 7mm Remington Magnum in 1962. That cartridge also used a shortened and neck-down 375 H&H case. Well, Winchester picked up the gauntlet Remington had thrown down and responded the following year with the .300 Winchester Magnum. Built using a modified .338 Winchester Magnum case, the .300 Winchester Magnum basically duplicated the performance of the other fast .30 caliber cartridges of the day, like the .300 H&H Magnum and the .308 Norma. Like the other new Winchester belted magnums, as well as the 7mm Remington Magnum, the 300 Win Mag also utilized a shorter case that would fit in a standard length rifle action. Offering a dramatic improvement in performance over the venerable 30-06 that also compared favorably to the 7mm Remington Magnum in many areas, the 300 Win Mag was an almost instant commercial success for Winchester, and it remains one of the most popular big game hunting cartridges in North America to this day. Okay, now let's shift gears a little bit and we'll talk about the 338 Lapua. Now, for a long time, I referred to this cartridge as the 338 Lapua. However, I think it's actually pronounced 338 Lapua. While the 300 Win Mag and the 338 Win Mag were both developed for big game hunting, the 338 Lapua was originally designed as a long-range sniper round for military use. Specifically, the designers of the 338 Lapua were trying to build a very accurate and flat shooting round that was more powerful and had a longer effective range than the 7.62 by 51mm NATO cartridge, but did not require as large or heavy of a rifle as the 50 BMG cartridge. Formally introduced by Lapua Limited in 1987, the designers of the 338 Lapua Magnum accomplished these goals by utilizing a new case based on the old 416 Rigby. The 338 Lapua is now very highly regarded as a long-range cartridge, and it has seen extensive use in the hands of military snipers from numerous countries. In addition to having a really long effective range, the cartridge is also, allegedly, capable of penetrating military body armor at ranges in excess of 1,000 yards. Though his record has since been broken, British Army sniper Corporal of Horse Craig Harrison held the record for the longest sniper kill for many years while using an Accuracy International L115A3 sniper rifle chambered in 338 Lapua Magnum. He used that rifle and cartridge to kill 2 Taliban machine gunners 2,707 yards or 2,475 meters away in Afghanistan's Helmand province in 2009. American sniper Chris Kyle also used the 338 Lapua to achieve his longest personal kill of 2,100 yards, which is 1,920 meters, back in Iraq in 2008. The 338 Lapua has also gradually crossed over into the hunting community in recent years. Though few hunters have a need to utilize the extreme long-range capabilities of the cartridge, it's still capable of delivering more power at longer range than just about any other comparable round these days. And as we'll discuss in detail shortly, the Lapua also utilizes very aerodynamic bullets that retain energy and resist wind drift exceptionally well. Now that we've discussed the history of these cartridges, let's talk about their dimensions. So while the 300 Win Mag uses a slightly longer case with a shoulder that sits a little bit farther forward than on the 338 Win Mag case, both cartridges have the same 25-degree shoulder angle and the same overall length of 3.34 inches. Both cartridges are belted magnums with the same .532-inch rim diameter and the same SAMI maximum average pressure of 64,000 psi. Due to its longer case length and the difference in placement of the shoulder, the 300 Win Mag does have a slightly greater case capacity than the 338 Win Mag. On the other hand, the 338 Lapua is significantly longer than both of the Winchester Magnum cartridges. The Lapua cartridge also uses a larger .588-inch rim diameter. Not surprisingly, it has significantly more case capacity than both the 300 and the 338 Win Mag. It also has a higher maximum SAMI pressure of 65,000 psi. However, while the 300 and the 338 Win Mag will both fit in a standard or a long-action rifle, the 338 Lapua Magnum requires a much longer rifle action. Finally, the 300 Win Mag utilizes 308-inch bullets, while both of the 338 cartridges shoot larger .338-inch bullets. Not surprisingly, there are some significant differences in the ballistics of these three cartridges. So I compared the ballistics for Hornady Precision Hunter and Winchester Expedition Big Game Factory loads for each cartridge. Specifically, these loads consisted of a 200-grain ELDX and a 180-grain AccuBond in 300 Win Mag, a 230-grain ELDX and a 225-grain AccuBond for the 338 Win Mag, and a 270-grain ELDX and a 300-grain AccuBond in 338 Lapua. Interestingly enough, there's not a tremendous difference in the trajectory of these three cartridges out to 500 yards, just about 5.5 inches between the flattest and the most arcing trajectory. That works out to about a 15% difference, which certainly isn't anything to turn your nose up at, though. But in general, they're all relatively flat shooting cartridges. And for these particular loads, the 270 grain 338 Lapua and the 180 grain 300 Win Mag had the flattest trajectory. The 300 grain 338 Lapua had the most arcing trajectory, with the remaining 300 Win Mag and both 338 Win Mag loads in the middle. However, what really sets these cartridges apart is how well they retain energy at longer range. This is especially true with the 338 Winchester and the 338 Lapua. Indeed, as powerful as the 300 Win Mag is, and it is powerful, the 338 Lapua ELDX load has almost as much kinetic energy at 500 yards as the 300 Win Mag AccuBond load has at 100 yards. Now, since our discussion today is focused on the hunting applications of these three cartridges, I didn't include any data past 500 yards, but all of them, with the 338 Lapua in particular, continue to perform well at even longer ranges. Now, when it comes to wind drift, all three cartridges perform very well, but the 338 Lapua has a definite edge here. Not surprisingly, those heavy, high ballistic coefficient bullets shot at a higher muzzle velocity are especially resistant to wind drift, and very few other rifle cartridges can provide a comparable level of performance. Now, that performance does come at a price, though: recoil. I compared the recoil of these three cartridges when fired from a Weatherby Mark V AccuMark rifle, which is currently available in all three chamberings. The 338 Win Mag has about 15% more free recoil energy than the 300 Win Mag in that rifle. However, the 338 Lapua clearly has the fiercest recoil of the bunch, an astounding 85% more free recoil energy than the 300 Win Mag. And that's really saying something, too, when you consider that the 300 Win Mag is hardly known as a mild recoiling cartridge itself. Now, this particular Weatherby rifle is a pretty light hunting rifle for a cartridge like the 338 Lapua, and I only used it to provide an apples-to-apples comparison of the three cartridges. Clearly, that rifle in 338 Lapua would not be a lot of fun to shoot, and it would have a very stout recoil. That is why most 338 Lapua rifles are pretty heavy and incorporate other recoil-reducing features like a muzzle brake. For instance, the Savage 110 FCP in 338 Lapua weighs 10 pounds, while the Ruger Precision Rifle and the Accuracy International AWM weigh over 15 pounds each. That exact same 338 Lapua load fired in a 15-pound rifle would produce only 32 foot-pounds of free recoil energy, which is only a tiny bit more than the 300 Win Mag in the 8.25-pound Weatherby rifle. Now, there are also some very important differences between the three cartridges when it comes to bullet size. The 300 Win Mag uses the smallest and lightest bullets of the three, 308 caliber bullets in the 150 grain to 230 grain range. 150, 165, 180, 190, 200, and 220 grain bullets are most popular for that cartridge. The 338 Lapua and 338 Win Mag both utilize larger diameter 338 caliber bullets. However, the 338 Lapua can generally use heavier bullets than the 338 Win Mag. For example, while it's uncommon to see 338 Win Mag ammo using bullets heavier than 250 grains, 225 and 250 grain bullet weights are most common for that cartridge. 270 grain, 280 grain, 285 grain, and even 300 grain bullets are very popular with the 338 Lapua. Now, since they use larger diameter bullets, the 338 Win Mag and the 338 Lapua have about 20% more frontal surface area, also known as cross-sectional area, than the 300 Win Mag. All other things being equal, a bigger diameter bullet will make a bigger hole, cause more tissue damage, and result in more blood loss to an animal that's hit with it. Additionally, the 338 Lapua also has an advantage in bullet sectional density compared to both other cartridges. Sectional density is a measure of the ratio of the diameter of a projectile to its mass. All other things being equal, a heavier projectile of a given caliber will be longer and therefore have a higher sectional density and consequently penetrate deeper than projectiles with a lower mass and lower sectional density. A 270 grain 338 caliber bullet has a sectional density of .338, and a 300 grain .338 inch bullet has a sectional density of .375, which is very high. This compares favorably to the .313 sectional density of a 250 grain 338 bullet and the .301 sectional density of a 200 grain .308 inch bullet. All right, so where do we stand with each cartridge? They're all very powerful and flat shooting, but the 338 Lapua is clearly the most powerful of the bunch, and it has the most resistance to wind drift. It has the same frontal surface area as the .338 Win Mag, and both cartridges have about 20% more surface area than the .300 Win Mag. It also commonly uses high BC bullets with a much higher sectional density than both of the other cartridges. However, all that comes at the expense of much more recoil than the .300 Win Mag and the .338 Win Mag. We'll discuss this more in a minute, but since the cartridge is designed primarily for long-range shooting and has such a heavy recoil, the .338 Lapua is most commonly available in very heavy rifles that dampen recoil but are more difficult to carry. Now, depending on the specific load being compared, the .300 Win Mag has either the flattest or the second flattest trajectory behind the .338 Lapua. And while it does have the least kinetic energy at all ranges of these three cartridges, it's still relatively powerful, and it is still suitable for most species of big game. It also shoots lighter and smaller diameter bullets, and it has less recoil than the other two cartridges. The .338 Win Mag falls more or less in the middle, has less recoil and retains less kinetic energy than the .338 Lapua, but it has more recoil and more kinetic energy at all ranges than the .300 Win Mag. And again, depending on the exact load in question, it has either the most arcing trajectory or the second most arcing trajectory, either ahead of or behind the .338 Lapua. Now let's talk about ammo selection. The .300 Winchester Magnum is by far the most popular cartridge of these three and is consistently among the best-selling rifle cartridges in the USA each year. Both of the .338 cartridges really lag behind the .300 Win Mag in popularity, but neither is really rare either. Many of the really big ammo manufacturers like Barnes, Berger, Federal, Hornady, Norma, Nosler, Remington, Swift, and Winchester produce good quality hunting ammo for all three cartridges. Prices and availability vary from region to region, but the .300 Win Mag is by far the most common and the least expensive. .338 Win Mag is a little more expensive, but .338 Lapua factory ammo is by far the most expensive of the bunch, and it can cost twice as much or more than .300 Win Mag ammo. All three cartridges are also relatively popular among reloaders, and hand-loaded components are widely available. In particular, there's a plethora of good quality bullets available to go around for all three cartridges. Now let's talk about rifle selection. When it comes to prices and availability of quality hunting rifles, .338 Lapua Magnum cannot touch the .300 and the .338 Win Mag. That's not really surprising either when you consider the roots of these cartridges, though. Don't get me wrong here, there are a number of really good .338 Lapua rifles out there. The problem is that most .338 Lapua rifles are specifically designed for military use and or for civilian long-range precision shooting, and therefore they're expensive, very heavy, and have a really long barrel like the Accuracy International AXMC, the Barrett MRAD, or the Sako TRG. There are exceptions, though, like the Savage 110 Long Range Hunter and the aforementioned Weatherby Mark V, which are much lighter and not quite as expensive as the others. However, those rifles do have their own downsides, but I'll discuss them in more detail here in a minute. On the other hand, since they don't really require an especially long barrel or a really heavy rifle for best performance, the .300 Win Mag and the .338 Win Mag are both manufactured in a number of really good bolt-action hunting rifles. The .300 Win Mag is especially common, and virtually every model produced by any firearms manufacturer of note is available in the cartridge. Even so, the .338 Win Mag is not rare by any stretch of the imagination, and guns like the Browning X-Bolt, the Mossberg Patriot, the Ruger Guide Gun, and the Ruger Hawkeye Alaskan, the Savage 110, the Tikka T3, as well as the Winchester XPR and the Model 70 are available in both cartridges. Even the semi-automatic Browning automatic rifle is produced in both .300 and .338 Win Mag. So which cartridge is right for you? While all three appear well suited for hunting many species of big game at first glance, this is where the real-world performance really starts to diverge. In particular, even though the .338 Lapua is indeed extremely powerful and, at least on paper anyway, is capable of cleanly taking virtually any species of big game, there are real downsides to using it afield. This is especially true when it comes to choosing a rifle in that cartridge. The reality of dealing with such a powerful cartridge that was originally designed for extreme long-range performance presents the user with a dilemma. Do you want to lug around a really big and heavy rifle weighing upwards of 15 pounds with a 26 or 28-inch barrel through the woods or up a mountain? Or would you rather use a lighter 8 to 10 pound rifle that's easier to carry but with much more recoil? Remember when I talked earlier about how the designers of the .338 Lapua wanted a cartridge with good long-range performance without requiring as large or heavy of a rifle as the 50 BMG? Well, as heavy as many .338 Lapua rifles are, Carrying one afield is certainly much easier than carrying a Barrett 50 cal that weighs 25 pounds or more, and there are still plenty of hunters who take game with the .338 Lapua every year. It will also really do a number on really big game like elk and moose with good shot placement. However, there are honestly very few hunting situations that require a cartridge as powerful as the .338 Lapua. This reason, combined with the aforementioned shortcomings of the .338 Lapua with regards to rifle weight, recoil, and ammunition costs, are why many hunters instead gravitate towards cartridges like the 300 and the .338 Win Mag, or even the .375 H&H, instead that are still plenty powerful but have much more manageable recoil and a lighter and easy-to-carry rifle. Now, I've talked at length at how powerful the .338 Lapua is, so I'm going to address the natural question that a lot of people tend to ask right about now. Can I hunt Cape buffalo with the .338 Lapua? I strongly recommend not doing that. First off, it's illegal for that sort of hunting in many countries. Even if the .338 Lapua meets the energy requirements for hunting dangerous game, and it does in some cases, most countries also have a .375 caliber or a 9.2 millimeter minimum for hunting thick-skinned dangerous game like Cape buffalo, which the .338 Lapua obviously does not meet. Additionally, even though it does have lots of muzzle energy and it can use very high sectional density bullets, I still wouldn't use it for buffalo in places where it would be legal to do so. As we discussed with Kevin Robertson back in episodes 97 and 103, bullet frontal diameter is very important when it comes to hunting buffalo, much more so than energy. The .375 will absolutely work just fine, but that's considered a minimum caliber for a reason, and you're really giving up much needed performance by dropping down to .338 caliber. Now, at the same time, don't forget the downsides that I've already described regarding the cartridge as they relate to recoil and rifle weight. Those concerns are even more important when it comes to hunting game like buffalo, where you might be walking 5 miles a day. It's no fun lugging a 15-pound rifle around on hunts like that, and the fierce recoil of that cartridge in a lighter rifle really hampers shot placement and your ability to take a well-aimed follow-up shot. And since buffalo are normally encountered at short range, like less than 100 yards, the long-range performance of the cartridge doesn't come into play in those sort of situations. So yeah, I'm sure you could kill a buffalo with the .338 Lapua, and I don't doubt that people have done it before, but I still don't think it's a good idea. If you miss or wound an elk, it's frustrating and embarrassing, and you obviously don't want to do that. But if you wound a buffalo, it might kill you or somebody else. So always keep that in mind and don't try to get cute when it comes to hunting dangerous game. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about some other hunting situations with these 3 cartridges. Do you primarily hunt black bear, deer, or hogs in an area where long-distance shots past 200 yards are uncommon and bullet drop isn't a big concern? All of these cartridges will work just fine under those circumstances from a purely ballistics perspective. However, while there's nothing necessarily wrong with using any of these cartridges in those sort of situations, if that's the only sort of hunting that you do, then none of them are strictly necessary, and then you could easily get away with something lighter. Of the 3, I would say to go with the 300 Win Mag, since ammo is generally cheaper and it has less recoil than the others. Speaking of recoil, are you more sensitive to recoil? Do you spend a lot of time in the mountains or in the backcountry, mountain goat, sheep, or tahr hunting, where it's really nice to have a lightweight rifle? None are really known as a classic sheep or mountain hunting cartridge, but once again, I would lean to the 300 Win Mag since it does have such a flat trajectory to go with its lighter recoil. Do you want the cartridge best suited for target shooting out to 1,500 yards or perhaps further in a precision rifle? In that case, definitely go with the .338 Lapua. It is specifically designed for this sort of work, and it does stand head and shoulders above almost all other rifle cartridges for long-range precision shooting these days. Do you want an ideal cartridge for especially large game like moose, eland, or big bull elk? Once again, all 3 cartridges are capable of getting the job done on that sort of game. Choosing the best one for this situation really depends on the hunter and the exact situation, but due to the aforementioned issues, the .338 Lapua isn't a practical choice for most hunters. I personally lean towards the .338 Win Mag for moose since it's a much bigger animal, especially if you're hunting in an area where it's possible you might run into a brown or grizzly bear. Even so, I don't think you can go wrong with the 300 Win Mag for any of those species, especially like during a hunt in Africa, North America, Europe, New Zealand, or elsewhere. Now, we just talked about bear. Are you specifically hunting brown or grizzly bear? What if you hunt in Canada or Alaska and you need a heavy-hitting cartridge just in case you find yourself on the wrong end of a brown or grizzly bear attack? The 300 Win Mag will work in a pinch, but the 338 Win Mag is a clear winner here since it uses larger diameter and heavier bullets. After all, there's a reason why it's such a popular cartridge among Alaskan and Canadian hunting guides. As I've stated multiple times today, the 300 Win Mag, the 338 Win Mag, and the 338 Lapua are all excellent rifle cartridges. However, while they all perform extremely well in their intended roles, the differences between them are very big in certain areas. So carefully analyze your potential needs and purchase the one that you think will fit them the best. I've written a very detailed article comparing these three cartridges, and I will be sure to put a link to that article in the show notes for those of you that want to check it out. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Let me know what you thought about it in general, as well as what you'd like to hear from me in the future. I really enjoy doing cartridge comparisons, so it's no trouble at all for me to record more of them in the future and perhaps even shorten the interval between these sorts of episodes. So like I said, just let me know. You're the whole reason I do this show, so I want to give you the sort of content that you like listening to. Now, if you want to join a community where you can have these sorts of discussions on a regular basis with me, then you need to check out huntingguns101.com. There you will receive some specific rifle, cartridge, ammo, and scope recommendations tailored to your specific needs, regardless of whether you want to hunt deer or pronghorn in the lower 48, moose in Alaska, or Cape buffalo in Africa. You'll also get exclusive access to a Facebook community for Big Game Hunting Podcast listeners, where you can get regular access to me, as well as lots of other experienced hunters and shooters who can answer your questions and give you feedback. We can talk about whatever you want in that Facebook group, to include bullet and cartridge recommendations. And to top it off, members receive exclusive discounts on outfitted hunts booked through Big Game Hunting Adventures. Booking just one hunt will more than cover what it costs to join that group. In fact, you're getting so much useful stuff from joining this community that I'm practically giving it all away considering what I'm charging for it. So if that sounds appealing to you, head on over to huntingguns101.com and sign up to get started. Now, the fact that you are listening to this podcast means that you are serious about making your dreams come true. Follow me on Instagram at The Big Game Hunter, and you can send questions that you have about the show to me on Instagram via direct message, or just send me an email, john@thebiggamehuntingblog.com. Remember, you can make your dream hunt turn into a reality, and we can help. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you back here next time on the Big Game Hunting Podcast.
This show may be over, but we have plenty more for you on our website. For more information on today's topic, as well as lots of other useful hunting resources, head over to the BigGameHuntingBlog.com. We look forward to having you back for the next episode. But until then, happy hunting.